Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Kingston Liberal Synagogue. Delighted to have those of you who've joined us this morning while your Rabbi Rene is on leave, and just lovely. This is one of the benefits of these strange days that we are in, be able to gather together, and we are delighted. Rene and I go back a long way and love to work together, so it's lovely to do so with the congregation. With this morning, we are using Siddur Lev Chadash, service number 2, on page 112. So, as always, the first prayer, Matovu, allows us to transform our kitchen, our sitting room, our garden, if your Wi-Fi extends that far, into the sanctuary this morning for us to be together. To page 112, but I would like to just substitute a reading from Rabbi Dr. Art Green. Art Green is a wonderful scholar. He is the biographer of Nachman of Bratslav, and we in our morning meditation group have been following Nachman of Bratslav very much. An intriguing man, and Art Green manages to carry that balance of Hasidic enthusiasm with an intellectual rigor of thinking what Judaism brings to us. And we loved this piece that we found. I do not know a God who commands or cares about the fulfillment of specific rites. I understand that all religious practices are of human origin and evolve within religious communities through history. But I am suggesting that the creation of such rituals is indeed our human response to an authentic single mitzvah, a divine imperative of the immanent presence of God, a wordless calling forth within us that says, know me, wake up, be aware, I am your God. And with those words, let's take them into Eloheinu Shama on page 113. Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai v'ruach kol basar ish. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam hamchulal b'fi amo meshubach v'mfa'ar b'lshon chasidav v'avadav b'shvachot u'vizmarot nagadelcha v'namlichecha malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai melech mechulal Batishbachot. Top of page 114 is a piyut, a poem of love, piety, and intention by Yehuda Halevi, written in 13th century Spain. So do join me from your own homes. To you the stars of morning sing, from you their radiance bright did spring. Steadfast in their vigils day and night, your angels flooded with fervor ring. Your praise they teach the holy ones to bring into your house the breath of early light. Now from your homes, join me in reading responsively just the first few verses on page 114 from Psalm 19. Good to hear your own voice in your homes. The heavens declare the glory of God. The sky proclaims God's handiwork. Day unto day utters speech. Night unto night teaches knowledge. Yet there is no speech, there are no words. Not a sound of them is heard. And still their call goes out to all the earth, and their message to the end of the world. Yehi ratzon imrei fi, vehegion libi lefanecha, Adonai tzuri. V'goali.
Hanim zmirot v'shirim erot, V'yelecha nashitaro, Nafshi hinda b'tzel yadecha lagat voratzodecha. Midei dabri b'kodecha omer libi endodecha, Yerav naziki alecha, Ki nafshi taro elecha.
Now the Yishtabach.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בשירי זמרה. ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Go to the blessings before the Shema. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzeh or uvorei choshech. Oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hame'ir la'aretz v'ledarim aleha barachamim. Uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai kulam b'chochma asita. Melach ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shevach ma'aseh yadecha. V'yamorei or she'asita. Barucha Stella. Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer Hamorot. And the second blessing that talks particularly of the love for God for us and us for God. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your Torah and your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. We praise you, O God. In love you have called your people, Israel, to serve you. Shema Yisrael. Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Le'olam Va'ed.
אהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשופך ובקומך. וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
I'm going to share the words of Rabbi Israel Matuk on the idea of truth. Truth is not the best loved of virtues, and yet it is one of the noblest, as it is perhaps the hardest of them all. It needs courage and resolution and strength of will. It must be loved for its own sake, or it will not be practiced. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נעדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלך.
שירה חדשה שיבחו גואלים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו.
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. זו ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני גל ישראל.
Page 140 as we go into the tefillah.
אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, זוכר חסדי אבות ואמהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו ביהודה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מזריח השמש ומוריד הטל.
מקלקל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, צומק נופלים רופא חולים ומתיר אסורים
להחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיה המתים. לקדש את שמך בעולם כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך.
קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ כבודו.
כבודו מלא עולם.
ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו.
במקומך מלכנו תופיע ותמלוך עלינו, כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש. בשבתך אלוהינו, ימין לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אין מלך גדול, כי אין מלך גדול, הקדוש ברוך הוא. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד עוד לך, ולנצח נצחים, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש.
ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. מקדשי מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יזכו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. בשביעי רצית בו וקידשת בו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. שבת ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת, זכר
Sabbath day for all of us. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh, Shabbat. Say Adonai Eloheinu b'amcha Yisrael. Eternal God, be gracious to your people, and in your love accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. We praise you, O God, whom alone we worship in reverence. And together our blessing for gratitude, thanksgiving, appreciation. Let's read together. Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur hayenu, magen yishenu, ata hu l'dor v'dor. Nodeh lecha נספר תהילתך, על חיינו המסורים בידיך, ועל נשמותינו הפקודות לך, ועל ניסיך שבכל יום עמנו, ועל נפלאותיך וטובותיך, שבכל עת ערב ובוקר וצהריים. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך, ולך נאה להודות.
Shalom, Tova, Uvraka, Sim Shalom, Tova, Uvraka, Sim Shalom. Chesed v'rachamim, Chem v'chesed v'rachamim, Sim Shalom. ועל כל ישראל, עלינו ועל כל ישראל, עמך שים שלום.
Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh Shalom. Let's take a moment for silent prayer.
והגיון ליבי lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali Adonai tzuri v'goali Ratzon irefi Ve'egion libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali Adonai tzuri v'goali Ose shalom b'mama Kuyase shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'al kol bnei Adam Ose shalom b'mama Kuyase shalom aleinu Ve'al kol Yisrael Ve'al kol
Thank you, Dean. Always. So let's move over to the Torah service, our Torah service in isolation, as it were, still allowing us to heed the words of Torah, to be as a people connected to the cycle of reading together with the whole of Klal Yisrael, the whole of the Jewish community. We are back in sync with our cycle of Torah reading. I'll say a bit more about the Haftarah in a moment, but of course we are in the final book, in the book of Devarim, Deuteronomy. So much repetition in that book, but so much grand speeches as Moses looks back over his life and over the life of the Jewish community, an anachronism, the community of Israelites that has become a community during this time. I'm really reminded of the words of Rabbi Albert Friedlander, because in this particular section of the Parashat Ekev, Rashi plays on that term Ekev, which of course the word Ekev is heel in Hebrew, and he suggests that is this parasha suggesting that if we trample on the tiny commandments, on the tiny parts of being a pious member of this community, a thoughtful member of this community, then we lose so much? And we'll see that Moses uses his great speeches to kind of hammer home. And in the verses that we read today, chapter 8, verses 1 to 10, it's all about memory. It's all about Moses encouraging the people to remember what has happened, to connect with what they've been through. So Rabbi Albert Friedlander suggests gratitude and memory must be linked together. Forgetfulness is one of the great sins of our time. People block out remembrance of difficult times, of failures, of their own weakness. Then they do not remember the help they receive from others, and gratitude dies. So Rabbi Friedlander, Zichrono Livracha, combines that sense of gratitude and memory. So see what comes up for you as we read these 10 verses. Albert used to teach us rabbinic students a course in theology, and it was always after the end of the day. So classes generally finished at 3:30, but Albert would teach us at 4 o'clock. And he wove this extraordinary mixture of theology into what had been happening in his life that week. Often he might have just returned from the Vatican or done something extremely illustrious, and he was able to share with us these moments that he had as a rabbi. But mostly we were able to glean from him that his theology was not something that lived just in books. His theology wasn't even just created from his experience as a child, from Kristallnacht and leaving and the life that he built after. His theology was literally built from his everyday experience, interwoven with these weightier ideas of where God existed for him and the notion of memory and gratitude. So use those words as we move now to our Torah reading today. And let me just, I'm just looking for the Hebrew name. So delighted to be calling up or beaming up, as it is in these moments, beaming up an Aliyah LaTorah of a member from Kingston Liberal Synagogue, Ta'amod, Lior bat Avraham v'Sara, levarech et HaTorah.
Thank you. Baruchu Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch,
Baruchu
Baruch,
Adonai
Baruch,
HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruchu Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. כל המצווה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום תשמרון לעשות למען תחיון ורביתם וברתם וירשתם את הארץ אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיכם וזכרת את כל הדרך אשר הוליכך אדוני אלוהיך זה 40 שנה במדבר למען ענותך לנסותך לדעת את אשר בלבבך התשמור מצוותיו אם לא ויענך ויריבך ויאכילך את המן אשר לא ידעת ולא ידון אבותיך למען הודיעך כי לא על הלחם לבדו יהיה האדם, כי על כל מוצא פי אדוני יהיה האדם. שמלתך לא בלת מעליך, ברגלך לא בצקה, זה 40 שנה. וידעת עם לבבך כי כאשר יעשה איש את בנו אדוני אלוהיך מייסרך, ושמרת את מצוות אדוני אלוהיך ללכת בדרכיו ולירא אותו. כי אדוני אלוהיך מביאך אל ארץ טובה, ארץ נחלי מים, עיינות ותהומות, יוצאים בבקעה ובחר, ארץ חיטה ושורה וגפן ותאנה ורימון, ארץ זית שמן ודבש, ארץ אשר לא במסכנות תאכל בה לחם לא תשא, כל בארץ אשר אבניה ברזל ומהריה תהוצב נחושת. ואכלת ושבעת וברכת את אדוני אלוהיך על הארץ הטובה asher natan lach. So in the theme of memory, this is Moses reminding the people, you must faithfully observe and keep all the commandments. Remember Rashi calling on the Ekev, all the commandments that I enjoin upon you today, that you may thrive, literally thrive and live and increase and be able to receive, inherit, almost possess the land that I swore and promised to your ancestors to give to you. Remember the long way that God made you travel in the wilderness these past 40 years in order to test you by the hardships, to learn, literally to learn or to know what was going on in your hearts, whether you would choose to keep the commandments or not. I love that opportunity of saying to keep the commandments or not. And God subjected you to the hardships of hunger. Oh, just a reminder to keep yourself on mute if you are not on mute. And God subjected you to the hardship of hunger and gave you manna to eat, which neither you nor your ancestors had never known or experienced manna. We know that they were very confused by this thing that came that was like, it was described as being something like coriander seeds, but tasting like bdellium that could be cooked and made sweet. So here Moses reminds that God knows that it was a very strange thing that they experienced with manna. In order to teach you, and this line has to be one of the most beautiful lines, and I'll talk about it in a moment, that no human should live by bread alone, that everyone has to live on anything that God decrees. And then this wonderful image that the clothes didn't wear out, nor did your feet swell in these past 40 years. I gave you Rashi's idea that literally the children, the clothes that they wore, the clothes grew on their bodies, almost like shells grow on snails' back, that they never needed to change their clothes. They never suffered. They were able, I called it a kind of celestial dry cleaning, that the glory of God kept their clothes bright and clean. Bear in mind that your God disciplines or chastises you just as a housekeeper or a householder chastises their child. Therefore, keep the commandments of God and walk in God's ways, and in a way feel a sense of fear or reverence. For your God is bringing you into a land with streams and springs and fountains, coming from hills and plains, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, of figs, of pomegranates, a land that has olive trees and honey, a land where you eat food without any boundaries, without any lack, where literally you are going to lack nothing, a land whose rocks give forth iron and whose hills you can mine copper from. And then this last verse that to me it feels there's a sadness this summer, of course, that Kadima LJY's summer camp doesn't happen, and our children will not be benching, will not be blessing their meals from this one line that they come home and offer on their own Friday night dinner tables. When you have eaten your fill, you can give thanks to Adonai for the good land that has been given to you. Christine, you offer the closing blessing. Thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata betochenu, Baruch atah Adonai notein haTorah.
And a blessing for you, Christine, Lior Beit Avraham Vasara, for bringing blessing to the Torah for all of us in the congregation this morning.
Thank you.
So we move straight over to our Haftarah. We are post Tisha B'Av. We are in the series, the stretch of Haftarot of consolation, as we come from the harshness of Tisha B'Av, that period literally from the breaching of the walls of the 17th of Tammuz through to Tisha B'Av. And now we're in the period of reparation, of building up again of these Haftarot of consolation. In the progressive world, we've moved from just using the Haftarot from the prophet Isaiah to extend ourselves with the same spirit. And this morning, we read from, let me remind which psalm it is, Psalm 136, which carries within it that offer of consolation, of comfort, of togetherness, of reunion. After the Haftarot of affliction, we now move through the grieving and move on. And in these last 6 weeks that we have up till Rosh Hashanah, they are these 6 weeks of preparation, where the work that we do is dealing with ourselves, preparing as we arrive. Every year I talk of Rabbi Alan Lu, Zichrono Levracha, who wrote about the journey towards High Holy Days, beginning with Tisha B'Av and the days of the 17th of Tammuz before it, and of the breaking down and building ourselves up that we have to do. The message is hammered home that the covenant may be ignored or unfulfilled, but it is never broken, and we remain within it as the Jewish people in this generation. Our future is part of this personal work that we make as we approach Rosh Hashanah and that old-fashioned word of redemption. But for now, the clock is ticking. In the words of Pirkei Avot, the work is great, the master of the house is waiting, and we work through these weeks, these Shabbatot, leading us into the month of Elul and finally to the beginning of Tishri, gearing up for the promise of comfort and the universal message for all. So I'm going to see, did you unmute yourself?
I have unmuted myself.
So just use this. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. We're about to hear. So my mother's in my home and we're just realizing just how to manage so that her screen is not unmuted. So I will see that we can hear you, Mum.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivonu likro bechitvei hakodesh. Give thanks to the Eternal who is good, for the mercy of God endures forever. Give thanks to the God of gods, for the mercy of God endures forever. Give thanks to the Eternal our God, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who only does great wonders, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who by divine wisdom made the heavens, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who spread out the earth upon the waters, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who created great lights, for the mercy of God endures forever. The sun to rule the day, for the mercy of God endures forever. The moon and the stars to govern the night, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who struck down the firstborn of Egypt, for the mercy of God endures forever, and brought out Israel from among them, for the mercy of God endures forever. With a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who divided the Red Sea in two, for the mercy of God endures forever, and made Israel pass through the midst of it, for the mercy of God endures forever, but swept Pharaoh and his army into the Red Sea, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who led the people through the wilderness, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who struck down great kings, for the mercy of God endures forever, and slew mighty kings, for the mercy of God endures forever. Sihon, king of the Amorites, for the mercy of God endures forever. And Og, the king of Bashan, for the mercy of God endures forever. And gave away their lands for an inheritance, for the mercy of God endures forever. An inheritance for Israel, God's servant, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who remembered us in our low estate, for the mercy of God endures forever, and delivered us from our enemies, for the mercy of God endures forever, and delivered us from our enemies, for the mercy of God endures forever. Who gives food to all creatures, for the mercy of God endures forever. Give thanks to the God of heaven, for the mercy of God endures forever. We praise you, Eternal One, our God, Sovereign of the universe. You have been our source of strength and righteousness throughout the ages. The faithful God, whose word is deed, whose every word is true and just, for the Torah, for the privilege of worship, for the holy writings, for this Sabbath day, which you, Eternal One, have given us for holiness and rest, for honour and beauty. We thank and praise you, O Eternal One, our God. May all the living praise your name now and forever. We praise you, O God, for the holiness of the Sabbath.
Thank you. So let's go now into our community prayers. Delighted to call on James, Bobby and James. James and Bobby. James is one person. James and Bobby to read the community prayers. We are on page 484.
Eternal God, whose dominion embraces the universe, we ask your blessing for our Sovereign Lady, Queen Elizabeth, and all the royal family, for those who govern our country, and all who influence the quality of its national life. Make them conscious of their responsibility and teach them to exercise it in accordance with your will. May we all help to fashion in this country a society that excels in freedom and justice, tolerance and compassion, so that it may be a force of righteousness and peace in the life of humanity.
And let us
Eternal God, as you blessed our ancestors in generations past, bless now this congregation, its leaders, its members, and all who enter this synagogue to meet, to study, and to pray. Comfort the sorrowing hearts among us and heal those in anxiety or pain.
I'm just going to pause. As you pause, Bobby, I'm just thinking that if we pause and invite anyone to name someone who is unwell or that we are thinking of particularly, I just want to allow that moment to pause, whether you choose to name out loud or in your hearts.
Alex Rosen.
Alex Rosen. Okay. Jill Stone, William Michelson. Thank you. May they receive the care, the help. May those who love them and look after them receive the strength that they need.
May we all find here community and friendship, renewal of purpose and hope, a deeper understanding of our heritage, and a sense of your abiding presence. Bless all congregations of the House of Israel throughout the world. Let those who live under oppressive rule soon be freed, and may we all unite to witness to your truth and do your will.
Amen.
Eternal God, our rock and redeemer, grant blessing to the state of Israel, created to fulfill an age-old dream and to be a haven for the oppressed. Inspire its leaders and citizens with faithfulness to the aims of its founders, to develop the land for the benefit of all its inhabitants, and to implement the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice. May they live in harmony with one another and in peace with their neighbours, and cause to come true once more the ancient vision that out of Zion shall go forth Torah and the word of God from Jerusalem.
Amen. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai ki nizgav shemo lavado. We turn to page 489. Ki lecha tov natati lachem torati al ta'azovu.
את חיימי למחזיקים בה בתום מאושר דרכך דרכנו בכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה קדש ימינו
Thank you. Paul Dean has had to have windows closed in his flat today so that we don't hear the noise of Victoria Park during our Shabbat service. So open your windows now, mute yourself, do whatever you need to do to get yourself some more fresh air. So for me today, I found myself thinking about just one line that the writer Christian Johann Heinrich Heine wrote. Where they burn books, they will too in the end burn people. And why am I thinking about that line? I'm thinking about that line because of the one verse in the Torah this morning that made me think about the world we live in and the choices that we make. And that line is, humans cannot live by bread alone. I am aware this week of the horrors of what's happened in Lebanon, in Beirut, a country that is reliant on 90% of its food through importing into a port that no longer exists is about as frightening as it gets for a people and a corrupt government that is not necessarily going to look after them. I can think that most of us open our eyes to horrors that are happening around the world in the developed as well as undeveloped world, in how we encounter, navigate, negotiate the justice that we live amongst. Some of us might even feel at times huge frustration for our own leadership for the country that we inhabit. But it isn't that I wanted to talk about this morning. It is what Heine says about where in a place they burn books, they will in the end burn people. When is it okay to think about what it is that we need to nourish ourselves, to exist in the world beyond the bread that we eat, beyond the sustenance that we need to keep us alive, beyond the emergency appeals of concern and raising money and active justice that we need to be engaged with in the world? What about the area of beauty and art, of literature, and when we let ourselves and give ourselves permission to be touched by them? Humans cannot live by bread alone. I am sure the writers of Torah were not thinking about novels and books and poetry and art when they wrote that. But I feel for us in our generation of 2020 that we cannot let that go. For me, I'm noticing you, Sheila, with the shelves behind you of novels and books. And for us in our worlds, what touches us? Last weekend, I was in Cornwall and it was beautiful. But one of the most beautiful things I did was to visit the lost gardens of Heligan. The gardens that were tended to and nurtured with extraordinary detail and care before the First Great War, employing perhaps 20 or so gardeners. And abruptly, when the war came, the staff left. And indeed, one can even see now the head gardener's kettle left untended. So it's written, the manure keeping the pineapple and peach trees warm when they went off to war, the wild flowers in the meadows left to dry. Why? Because they were needed for other, more important things. The staff went to the front line, and after the war, that whole Cornish village had been decimated. And the garden, as you might imagine, fell into disrepair or was lost, as its current name implies. And yes, it is true that in times of disaster and catastrophe, that it is beauty that goes first, attention to beauty and the way we cultivate and look after beauty and art around us. It's only in the last 2 decades that the garden has come back to its former glory and has been tended in that way. But as you walk along those paths and you see those gardens, you see the greenhouses, you see even the photos of the gardeners gone to war and lost, your heart breaks because you are reminded that in those moments, of course, nothing matters more than life itself and protection. But we have a duty, as Heine reminds us, that somehow keeping alive our commitment to art, to beauty, to literature, to the sustaining of things that we might imagine are luxuries, are what keeps the world going, are what keeps our souls, our hearts revived. So that when we read that verse in this Parshat Ekev, humans do not live by lechem, by bread alone, we can translate it, extrapolate it into the world in which we live now. Shabbat Shalom. Amen. So we're going to continue now with Aleinu as we endeavor to finish our service together. So those of you who have wine, who have chalot, who have your whiskey, whatever you mark your kiddush with, this is the time to gather it so that we can end our service together, even speak to each other a little. But for now, we move to the Aleinu, that strange prayer that looks towards a time when the world will be better and we are responsible for making it so. Page 520.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, אשר שם חלקנו לאחד את שמו, וגורלנו להמליך מלכותו. אין עוד, 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 אין עוד.
שנאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד. So we turn now to Kaddish, to marking the yahrzeits that fall in our congregation this Shabbat and the deaths also. We think particularly this Shabbat of Doris Newman, mother of Dan Newman, grandmother to Anya, Zach and Jess, whose funeral will take place tomorrow and Shiva will be on Monday evening. I think the community has had the details for that. We turn now also to those who are marking yahrzeits. We think particularly of Margot Griffin, mother of Barbie Slater, of Edna Kay, mother of Anthony Kay, and Pamela Kinnunen, sister of Anthony Kay, of Simon Lesser, brother of Sheila King Lassman, of Geoffrey Rosenbaum, father of Claire Pierce, of Clive Winston, father of Penny Brailsford, but dear and beloved friend of our congregation, and of Katie Wall, aunt of Leslie Urbach. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. May those who remember and recall their loved ones be comforted in their loss, as we say the Kaddish with them. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei Rabbah. Do unmute yourself and join me for this. I'm going to begin again.
Oh, Rebecca, can we do
Yitkadal
Kingston's?
v'yitkadash shamei Rabbah. Bi'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayachon uv'yomechon. Uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. B'agala v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omer maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ah v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitada v'yitaleh v'talal shmei d'kudusha. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Da'amiram bi'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shamaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'al kol b'nei adam. V'imru. Amen.
Amen. Rebecca, can we just add Kingston's yahrzeit to your list,
Definitely, I'm sorry.
please? That's okay. So this week, thinking of Ruth Myers, mother of Natalie Ruthnam, grandmother of Max and Georgia Ruthnam, and also of George Regal, the father of Mary Simmons and grandfather of Robert, Alison and Nathan.
May their memories be for a blessing, and may those who recall the community of Kingston Liberal Synagogue their loved ones be comforted in their loss. So I don't know whether we have reached such the height of summer that we have no one who is making announcements this morning. So I am literally asking whether we have anyone sharing anything this morning that needs sharing. So I'm looking to see Craig. Do you want to say anything for your congregation?
I think we're all okay. I think our congregation will have received all the announcements in the bulletin. Yeah, I think that'll do.
Okay, so for us, it's a quieter time during August. Most activities cease except for Shabbat services. Rabbi Danny Rich is back leading next Shabbat, and I think leading for Finchley and Manchester together. Am I right, Valerie and Josie? So obviously, welcome to that. And is there anything else to tell you? LJ is having a music afternoon ahead of the High Holy Days. That is tomorrow at 3 o'clock till 4:30, if you would like to join. So do, I think it should be there in all the publicity that's come from Liberal Judaism, but if you can't find it and you'd like to join, please let me know. This Thursday, Lionel Lassman leads Beit Midrash on Hidden Gems of Jerusalem. So that's for us, Finchley Progressive, but everyone is warmly invited. And if you would like the link, again, be in touch with us. Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Chodesh group will be meeting on the 18th of August. And again, details are always in our emails. And I think that is it. Kingston Liberal and FPS, I hope, might gear up for something around Slichot. And the musicians and I, our own Dean and Franklin, are yet to organise that. But we are already starting to think High Holy Days. We are already looking at melodies, both traditional and possibly one new. So we are well and truly on that path. So I wish you all shalom. Close this morning with Adon Olam.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נשא בחצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה
Let me give you a moment to gather your kiddush. So bring your wine, your challah. So as you gather for kiddush, I see also that on our yard site list, Joshua Rosenbaum. Josh Rosenbaum had not been listed, who of course is the son of Jeffrey Rosenbaum. There's nothing more awful than not being included in that, and I apologize, Joshua, so much. And we wish you long life on this first yard site of your father. Let's go together into Kiddush. I have small offerings of chalot. Let me see your chalot, your wine, ready. Wonderful, wonderful. So as you gather your wine, your whiskey, let me guide you if you want to follow in our Siddur, which I never remember the page for the Shabbat morning Kiddush. So if someone gets there first, please tell me. Someone help me so you can follow page 566. 566. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dortam berit olam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael oti le'olam ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei peri hagafen. Amen. And for our chalot, replacing the manna, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. So do unmute yourself, ready to share. Introduce yourself, Kingston. Another warm welcome to you.
Hello, Finchley. It's lovely to be here. Thank you very much for hosting us.